Welcome to another Just Traveling Through video. I'm Celeste.
And I'm Terry.
And today we're going to be giving you tips for visiting the Loire Valley.
The Loire Valley contains over 300 chateaus. The chateaus range from practical fortified castles built in the 10th century to splendid residences built 500 years later.
The Loire Valley have been on our list of places to visit for a long time.
We bought a coffee table book some years ago that contained overhead views of the chateaus in the valley, and ever since we bought that book, we've been dying to go.
In addition to the chateaus, you'll be able to experience the culture, the food, and of course the wine of the region. In this video, we're going to focus on the tips for visiting, where it is, getting around, driving in the Loire Valley, and then we're going to do another video that's focused purely on the castles that we saw while we were there.
Yeah, there are a lot of small details about France, and especially about driving in France, that you need to know before you ever get into your rental car.
So where is the Loire Valley? It sits to the southwest of Paris.
800 square kilometers.
That stretches from Angers to Orléans. As mentioned before, there's over 300 chateaus in the Loire Valley, and the yellow icons on this map are showing you where some of the more famous ones are.
The purple icons show you where some of the wineries are in the valley. There's a huge number of them.
Many more than we're showing here. As far as getting to the Loire Valley, in our case, we flew into London, and then from London we took a cheap flight on EasyJet to Nantes, which is just west of Angers. However, most people are going to fly into Paris and then take a train.
We are big advocates of the train system in France. It's very fast, very efficient, not too expensive, and very comfortable.
For example, taking the train from Paris to Angers takes roughly an hour and a half and costs between $50 and $60.
Or you could take a train from Paris to Orléans. It takes about an hour and 20 minutes, and it's only $22.
And Orléans is the closest major city in the Loire Valley to Paris. If you decide to start a tour, you have to be careful because some of the trains are direct and some of them are not. Some of them actually go through Orléans. The direct train takes about an hour and 14 minutes and costs around $45 depending on where. There's so much distance to cover in the Loire Valley that we do recommend renting a car once you get there, or you could rent your car in Paris and drive to the Loire if you didn't want to take a train.
Yeah, you're going to need a rental car. The chateaus are not lumped close together. They're scattered about.
Now, how do you pick where you want to stay or where you want to start? We stayed in 3 different places.
And it worked out well for us because that allowed us to never have to drive more than 100 kilometers in any given direction.
We did our Loire tour from west to east. We stayed in Angers, then in Chinon.
And then on to Amboise.
As far as accommodations go, there are a variety to choose from. There are mostly small local hotels. In the bigger cities like Thru and Amboise, you'll find some European chains such as Ibis. They don't typically have any large American chains.
No, you're not going to see any large American chains out there in the valley at all.
In our case, we used Vrbo to find rentals in the different locations. Sometimes we wanted to stay in a city or a village, and then near Amboise, we actually stayed in the countryside in a transformed gatehouse that was part of a country estate. We knew it had parking right out in front. Knowing what the parking situation is when you reserve a place is really important.
Definitely, because parking can be a serious challenge in these villages.
So we always look for places with parking or that had somewhere to park nearby. In Chinon and outside of Amboise, we stayed in Vrbo, and we'll put the links to those places down below if you're interested. We recommend planning your days around seeing maybe 2 chateaus and a winery.
You're going to spend a minimum of 90 minutes at each chateau. They're all quite large, multiple floors, large estates. There's a lot to see and appreciate.
Each one has its own character.
The history is fascinating.
So seeing just 2 a day seems to be a good balance.
Yep.
In the Loire Valley, eating times can be more restrictive than they are in the United States. For example, lunch was typically between 12 and 2 to 2:30. And if you were hungry before 12 or after 2:30, you weren't going to be able to find lunch anywhere. Sometimes you might be able to find a brasserie serving some light food. When you walk in, ask for une table pour manger, and they will let you know if they're serving food. The same goes for dinner. They open for dinner around 6:30 or 7, typically. We got used to going, oh, it's noon. We have to find somewhere to eat so we don't miss the window.
Yeah.
Many restaurants have the formula breakfast or lunch specials. The breakfast usually consists of coffee, a pastry, a bread or jam, many times fresh pressed squeezed orange juice, and sometimes yogurt. The formula lunches frequently have multiple courses, including bread, salad, the main meal, and a dessert. Wine or beer is common at lunch. These formula options tend to be very good deals. Also, realize that tipping is not required, expected, or common at all. So the food in the Loire Valley is typical French food. You're going to find some things made with freshwater fish, various chicken dishes, poulet rôti, roasted chicken, goat cheeses, something called rillettes, similar to pâté. It's got meat inside, like pork or duck. They always have crepes, savory crepes called galettes, and dessert crepes as well. We had wonderful salads. We had pizzas that were fantastic. And don't pass up the Café Gourmand. Café Gourmand is a wonderful cup of coffee that comes with 3 to 5 small desserts. You also might see a local specialty called tarte tatin, a variation of apple tarts where apples are caramelized and sometimes dough cooked on top. And if you're really picky, you could always just eat ice cream.
French ice cream is really quite tasty. The difference is that French ice cream is made with eggs, so it's thick and custardy, whereas American ice cream is made with sugar, milk, and cream. We found it to be very, very tasty.
Every village or city has a boulangerie, a patisserie, or many of those. And you can always stop at one of those if you can't find any other options. The roads in France have different designations, and it can be helpful to know what those are as you're planning your route.
Yeah, any route that begins with an A is an autoroute, which will frequently be a toll road. Any road that you come across that starts with an N is considered to be a national road, and the most common country roads start with D, a departmental road.
Yeah, the departmental roads can be main roads between villages, but they can also be quite rural. So these secondary departmental roads, as they're called, may be more narrow and sometimes have worse conditions. For the most part, the roads are in excellent condition. Driving on roads in France, there are some things you should be aware of. One of the major differences is
No right on red. So if you pull up to a stoplight, you cannot turn right on that red light.
So the second thing is the priorité à droite rule.
Yeah, which is subtly different than what we do here. The people coming in from the right have the right of way, even if you're already out there on the road.
Unless otherwise posted. So here are some of the road signs associated with priority.
Yeah, you're going to see these all over the road system in France, everywhere you go, and it's good to be aware of what they mean and what they don't mean.
First one is priority is given to the primary route. The second one there with the cross. At the intersection ahead, priority is given to the traffic coming from the right. If you see this yellow diamond, it means you have priority on the road, so the priority à droite doesn't apply. And then you can see if you have the black line there, it means it's the end of your priority on the road.
Yeah, they use that black line through a sign concept all over the place. For example, when you're departing a town or a village, they'll do the same thing there. They'll let you know you're leaving that area.
In roundabouts, vehicles entering the flow of traffic from the right get the right of way unless otherwise posted.
This is one you should memorize because roundabouts are amazingly popular in France. You're going to find them everywhere. They prefer them over stop signs and stop lights.
If you see something that says "Vous n'avez pas la priorité," this gives priority to the drivers on the roundabout, and it is shown by this triangular symbol with the circular arrows inside.
Yeah.
And here are some of the road signs, some of the more popular ones that may not always be as obvious.
Yeah, but you're going to see them again everywhere in France, and they're useful and informative and good to know.
30 kilometers per hour zones are frequently in villages as you're driving through.
Very frequently.
The second one there is no overtaking. So even if the road has a dotted line, if there's a sign saying no overtaking, you're not allowed to pass. This next one confused us for a bit. We didn't do our homework before we went, and we're like, what are those signs? And it's basically telling you that when the road is too narrow, you have to give priority to the oncoming vehicle.
Okay, so you can see the triangular sign with 2 arrows. That's two-way traffic. And the one next to it is telling you that you have priority to go down that narrow road or one-lane road.
At the bottom left, you have the motorway and the end of motorway. Those are helpful if you're getting onto a road. The motorway sign will be there to tell you that it's most likely an auto route, which can mean that it might have tolls, so something to be aware of.
The next circular one is a speed limit sign, and you're going to see those everywhere. The speed limit will vary. Sometimes it'll be 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 kilometers per hour. And then when that zone ends, they'll put a black line through it to indicate that particular speed limit is now removed.
So the next one being in French wouldn't be obvious at all to people who don't speak French. So allumez vos feux means turn on your headlights. And then last but not least, the bumps in the road,
which you will find on some of the D-class highways.
Those are actually very frequent in the villages that you traverse, because a lot of times there's going to be some kind of bump, or there's going to be, even sometimes they have things that jut out into the road to get you to slow down as you come into a village. So a lot of the villages have a 30 kilometer per hour speed limit, and these bumps sometimes are there to tell you, hey, slow down.
They're fond of that. They prefer those bumps and thing that protrudes into the lane. They prefer those over any other kind of device.
Toll roads are very popular in France.
Yeah, these signs are really important for you to understand the distinction, because at every toll booth you're going to see some or all of these indicating what you should do.
So the T symbol means télépéage accepted, and if you're just visiting France, you likely won't have one of these. They're not giving them out normally on rental cars. It's mostly for local people. I think you need a European bank account even. I'm not sure. But the rental car didn't give us one. So don't go to one of the things that only has the télépéage. If it's got the green arrow, like the one on the bottom there, that's okay, because that's going to accept all forms of payment. But just the T means you're going to be in trouble. So if it's got a credit card symbol, it means it'll accept credit cards in that lane. Your credit card must have a chip, but not all chip cards are accepted. We had frequent issues with American Express. Was not popular at all in France, in that part of France. So we don't recommend going through the credit card only one, just in case your cards don't work. And always have cash as a backup just in case. So if you look for that green arrow and go into that lane, you're going to be all set. But just make sure you have some cash, just in case when you stick your credit card in there, it says not accepted. Happened to us many times. We were happy to have cash in the car.
Don't leave home without your change.
The little villages that you visit in the Loire Valley are frequently going to have these parking meters. So they're called payant. It'll say payant on the ground.
Yeah, and having parking meters, we mean there's not a parking meter per slot. There's like one of these payant machines for the entire lot.
The machines typically take cash or credit. We used credit most of the time, but there was a couple of times when we had to use cash. Follow the instructions on the machine, and then get a ticket and put that ticket on your dashboard. And that's all we have on the Loire Valley for today.
We hope you enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun putting it together.
And if you subscribe, you'll get a notification when we get our video together on the castles in the Loire Valley.
And that will be followed by a video about our trip to the Dordogne Valley, which will be as interesting as the chateau.
Thanks again.
Thank you for watching.
Cheers.
And don't forget to subscribe.